a space where we merge science, spirituality, and psychology to help you achieve optimal health and wholeness. Hey everyone, welcome back to Healing with David. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing Kundalini and how you can incorporate it into your high performance lifestyle. We're going to be interviewing a Kundalini practitioner and teacher, Kelle Jacob, who I've had the pleasure of practicing with several times. And specifically, we're going to be going over what Kundalini is, how it benefits you from a really kind of clinical, almost scientific perspective, and then also how it can upgrade your spiritual practice in very tangible ways. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce Kelle, who's here with me. And Kelle, I'd love for you just to kind of introduce yourself to the audience and give them a sense of how you fell into Kundalini practice and how it's really helped you along your journey.
Yeah. So thank you, David. I'm so excited to be here with you today and talk about one of my favorite topics, Kundalini. So it truly has been a journey that's led me here. I spent 10 years in the corporate world as a brand manager for the Estee Lauder companies, living in Shanghai, traveling, working globally, international retail, and amazing, checking all the boxes. And towards the end, I started to have a lot of health issues with my digestion. I was breaking out in hives. I was having hormonal issues. And every doctor I went to would just prescribe a medication. So I think I had 3 endoscopies over the course of 3 months while doctors were trying to figure out what was going on. And I got to a point where I was like, so what, I'm going to be on antacids and antidepressants for the rest of my life? Like, it just didn't seem right. And so I took matters into my own hands, and I decided to I started studying Ayurveda. And I found an Ayurvedic doctor in Bali. So I went there for 2 weeks
Can you tell
where,
us what Ayurveda is? Because maybe
oh,
some of the listeners aren't aware. So
yeah, definitely. So Ayurveda is one of the oldest healing technologies and sciences in the world. It's over 5,000 years old, and it lives within the Vedic text. And it's comprehensive in the understanding that everything is connected. Your mind, your body, how you feel, your temperament, what you eat. And so unlike Western science, where kind of like your stomach is your stomach issue and your emotions are something very separate, it really understands that every person is unique and has a unique constitution. And that when there are certain imbalances through these elements, whether it's your vata, your pitta, your kapha, and we can go deeper into that. But when you have a certain imbalance, that manifests symptoms. So rather than look at illness as there's something wrong with you, we need to kind of squash that. You look at some of these things as symptoms, as information of where there might be an imbalance. And there are certain things that you can do to bring yourself back into the balance, which is appropriate for your constitution. So in going under the care of this Ayurvedic doctor, I became very aware that there were things that were out of balance within my system. And using tools like herbs, like food, meditation, breath work, things to really help bring my body back into balance. So for example, my pitta was very high, which deals a lot with inflammation and fire and heat. So eating a lot of cooling foods helped to bring that down. Also, things like breath work were very powerful. So over 2 weeks of eating well, being in nature, meditation, breath work, also a lot of holistic treatments like acupuncture, oil treatments, hydrotherapy, things like that. Within 2 weeks, all of the symptoms that I was battling for a year subsided. I never felt better. I
wow.
never looked better. And I remember saying that there's no amount of lipstick and moisturizer in the world that'll make someone look and feel as good as learning how to take care of themselves. So what was supposed to be a 2-week treatment, I ended up staying in Bali for 2 months, and it turned into an apprenticeship where I really wanted to understand and learn what happened to me. Why did this all work? And that really began my journey into wellness. And really, when I began to integrate these tools that I'd only read about in wellness magazines, like meditation and breath work, I really began to integrate them as part of my lifestyle. And when I returned, I only wanted to learn more. So, like, why is it that what you eat affects how you feel emotionally? And that's when I began to learn that 94% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. So I started to study integrative health and nutrition at IIM to understand that your body is this amazing equipment. It's like this machine. And we very rarely are we given the guidebook of how to actually manage and run our bodies and how it works. And so I delved deep into that, never with the idea of coaching, but really just to have a deeper understanding. But as I started sharing information, people started reaching out and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is what I've done. This is what works. And people start to see a lot of results. And that's what gave birth to Asri Wellness, which is my company. And the more I got into that and helping people, I then soon began to realize that everyone knows that they should eat vegetables and exercise and probably drink water, but they don't do it, right? And I noticed that so much of what people desire in life, they know exactly what to do, but sometimes they don't. There's resistance, there's self doubt, there's insecurities when the path before them is very clear. And it became clear to me that I needed better tools. It became clear to me that so much of what keeps people stuck is really a mindset issue, right? It's really about kind of getting through our own limiting beliefs and self doubts and that internal struggle. So I needed better tools. And I wanted to understand how the mind works. So I began to study neuroscience, specifically neurolinguistic programming, and really understanding and gaining tools on how to work with the subconscious mind, how to get people, in lack of better terms, out of their own way so that they could start creating the things that they want in their lives. And when I started integrating those tools like hypnotherapy, neuroenergetic encoding, having tools that allow people to rewrite some of the things that might have been traumatic for them in their past and free them from those limitations, what people were able to accomplish were nothing short of astounding. I mean, I had clients that shifted careers, that stepped into roles of power that they never thought were possible for themselves. And it was amazing. It was so rewarding just even as a coach to see what's possible when people are able to let go, hold them back. And I love my job. I love that I get to support people on that journey. And so I was doing that, really happy, seeing a lot of results. And then I remember I was going through something hard myself. Now, here I am, a hypnotherapist. I have a great toolbox. And yet I found myself in a difficult time. I was in the middle of a divorce and there was just a lot happening. And I remember I was spending time with a girlfriend who, I don't know if you know these people, but I mean, the building can be burning, but she could just be so calm and so stoic. And no matter what's going on around her, if things are just crazy or stressful, she is always incredibly centered and so calm and just seems to navigate life with ease. And I remember asking her, like, how are you like this? Like, how is life not lifing at you right now, especially during the pandemic? And she's, oh, I had my Kundalini activated. I'm like, what's a Kundalini? And how do I activate it? And so I like went home and Googled like how to activate your Kundalini. And what came up was a Kundalini yoga class. So I'm like, okay, that's got to be a start. So I went to my first Kundalini yoga class, not knowing at all what to expect. And I get there and we're doing like some arm thing. We're moving our arms and we're chanting. And all of a sudden, tears just start streaming down my face. And it's a 90-minute class. And I mean, it felt like this massive relief. By the end of the class, I just had to sit there. I never felt the amount of relief or lightness that I never knew I needed. I released things that seemed so deep within that I didn't even know that were there to be let go of. And I had such an ease and such a clarity and such an awakening to, okay, so this is what it means to kind of be connected. And so the school that I went to had a special where it was like for $44, we could take unlimited classes for a month. And I went every day and just went deeper into this. And what I've learned now, and so after that, I'm like, I have to know, what is this? Why did that happen? What did I release? What's going on here? And so I did a teacher training, mainly to deepen my own practice and to learn what, why, how was going on with this practice. And in so doing, I learned so much about how the human body works. And more importantly, I feel like I've been given the like manual of our body, of our mind, of our connection, understanding how all of these work together.
Curious, just quickly, within your Kundalini teacher training,
Mhm.
How deep do they go into the science and mechanics of how it works, or is it more like a Vedic style of teaching? Like,
No.
just curious about that.
Oh, it was so comprehensive. First of all, it was a 7-month program, and we go
Okay.
into understanding elements of traditional Chinese medicine, right? Understanding meridians, and how chanting, you're hitting certain meridian
Mhm.
points, understanding that why holding our bodies or our arms or limbs at certain angles puts pressure on certain organs, understanding the power of the glandular system to the science of which glands are releasing which neurochemicals, understanding not just the kind of the esoteric and things like sound, current, and vibration, and the mantra and the sounds and their meaning, and the deep part
Mhm.
what we did in the spiritual side of it, but also understanding how that connects to the physical body, right? So, and
Yeah,
it's so fascinating now too, because mind you, I've studied integrative health. I have a general understanding of like our nervous system, understanding our vagus nerve, understanding our stress response, what physically happens to our bodies, the physical side of it. And Kundalini was this marriage of this understanding of what science has shown us to be benefits within our physical body, but marrying it to something so much greater, right? Leading us to our connection to the
definitely.
divine.
Absolutely. And just for those who are not as familiar, since you've gone through the teacher training, you've been teaching for a little bit, how would you define Kundalini yoga? And specifically, how does it differ from the other types of yoga that are out there?
Yeah. I would say Kundalini is probably the most spiritual and comprehensive of all of the yogas. So there are certain yogas that are very physical, where it's just move your body, hold this posture, and it can take you. I think like Ashtanga yoga it can take you 26 years to really truly master it, or even Hatha yoga it can take a very long time. There are some that focus just on breath work. There are some that are just very meditative, right, and just their mind. Kundalini is comprehensive; it holds all of it. It's also like a silver bullet. It gets right to the essence of, I think, why we do yoga, right? Is to connect to this oneness. And it's probably one of the most spirituals. How I define yoga, Kundalini, is if you're a house and the essence of you is like a boulder, right? The essence, like your true soul, your source, the part of you that's connected to everything that is. It's like a boulder. It's of the earth. It's strong. It's powerful. Then everything that's not you, like the limiting beliefs, the self doubt, that relationship that may not have worked out, whatever it is, are like scraps of paper or pieces of wood that are just taking up space in your house. Kundalini is like that spark, that light, this white healing light that ignites and helps to dissolve all those things that aren't you. And it helps you to release them. It helps you to heal them. It helps you to let it go so that what's left is your deep connection, your awareness and connection and sturdiness with the essence that truly is you. So I think this is why sometimes people get a little afraid of Kundalini because that's a lot when you get to, oh no, but who am I without the self doubt and the fear and the insecurity? And that could be a scary journey, but it's so powerful because you get to truly connect with that most divine part of you. In addition to that, Kundalini very much works with this understanding that your body, it's like our machine. It's what's getting us through. It's a tool. It's a vehicle for things that we're doing. And it's a very specific technology that helps you work your body to release certain things and to kind of help you heal and help you along that path to that oneness, right? So for example, it's not vinyasa where it's okay, guys, we're gonna do a really chill flow today. I don't make
Hmm.
up the flows or the practices. We have
Sure.
things called kriyas, which are a prescribed set of movements that have a very specific purpose. That these come from the Vedas. These are the Vedic texts. These are thousands of years old that have been tested by yogis across the time. And they're a prescribed set of movements. And what's
Totally.
interesting now as science catches up is that we're seeing now everyone talks about the vagus nerve and how strengthening your vagus nerve is really great for combating stress and anxiety. Vagal toning, things like breath work, things like working our central column automatically strengthen that vagal nerve, that vagus nerve. And so we're seeing a lot of things written in science now that have been written in Kundalini texts and doctrines for a very long time.
Totally. I mean, one of my favorite books on Ayurveda is called The Scientific Basis for Ayurveda. It's a book this thick
Mhm.
that basically just talks about the scientific basis for fasting, which is now backed by autophagy, which got the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2016. For it sounds like you obviously had a pretty lengthy journey before encountering Kundalini. And I'd be curious on your perspective on who do you feel benefits most from Kundalini? Because not every modality is suitable for you at every step of the journey. And Kundalini, from what it sounds like and from what I've experienced, is quite deep work. And so, curious, who do you think it's for, either from a physical perspective or from a spiritual perspective? Who would be the best beneficiary for
Yeah,
Kundalini yoga?
that's a great question. I think Kundalini, like it finds you when you're ready for it. I find that people that are kind of going through life, they're checking the boxes and there's something deep within them that like, there's something more that I'm here for. I feel like it's like almost like waking up from the matrix,
Amen.
right? I feel like Neo, there's something more. I feel like I'm checking the boxes. I know that there's something more I'm supposed to do. There's this subtle self-awareness that there's more that you can do, that you can be, and there's some way that you feel a little stuck. And I see this manifest itself. And it's funny because I feel like I went through this. Even my corporate job was making this huge salary, living the world, like living the life, like traveling, great company. But in some ways, something was missing. I felt this deep gnawing inside that there was something more I was supposed to be doing or I could be doing. And I think when people feel this, it manifests itself in different ways. So sometimes we find ourselves in through addiction, like we're running away, we're thinking this angst that we're feeling. Sometimes it's due anxiety, sometimes it's constant stress, but there's just this feeling of this desire for a relief and this desire to feel connected to something even bigger than what where you currently are. And I think Kundalini finds people in those spaces or is most helpful to people in those spaces because it helps to kind of, I remember saying when I was going through my journey, if I could just quiet the noise and get centered and hear what it was I was supposed to do, I know I could figure this out. And Kundalini is a very powerful tool when you have the noise of what you should be doing and all of these things, what society says I should do. And there's something that's not aligned. Kundalini is very powerful of clearing that space and allowing you to connect with that divine part of you and help you
Mhm.
create and clear that path forward. In that way, it's incredibly transformational, especially for those that are ready for that.
Nice. Very well put. Thanks for sharing that. Whoops. So my headset went off. Cool. Amazing. And I think like anyone who's been on a journey for a little bit of that, and chances are if you're interested in this kind of work or podcasts like this, that's really beneficial. I would be curious, you did talk about the glandular system and the nervous system. And a lot of people who are interested in this podcast, or even people like you and me, we do have deep spiritual lives, but we're also high performing people in the 3D kind of concrete realm. And I would be curious to learn a little bit about how Kundalini supports this physical, this vehicle, body, in from a performance standpoint, from a health perspective, and just learn a little bit more. I know that there's a lot, like you mentioned, you did a 7th month training, but just a couple of the highlights that you have found for yourself and for others in terms of the physical benefits.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you three. So the first one,
Okay.
being our nervous system and strengthening our nervous system. I'll explain that. Then I'll talk
Hmm.
just about the neurochemistry and how it can really help change your molecular makeup and kind of your whole mindset. We'll start there. So let's start with your nervous system. So we all know we kind of, when we're in a sense, a state of stress, right? Our stress response is activated. Our nervous system is like, oh my God, high alert, this is danger. But in today's society, it's not because we're being chased by lions, but usually it's because we're getting a call or a text from our boss, or we sent this email, or we have to give a presentation, or we're stuck in traffic and we're late. Like our stress response, especially in New York, there's almost always activated. And what determines this is our nervous system, right? Our parasympathetic nervous system. What I find with Kundalini is on the mat when we're in our practice, we are in a very safe and very specific way, putting pressure on our nervous system, right? Kind of like how you work a muscle in the gym to make it stronger, you got to work it a little bit. But Kundalini does this in a way where we're actually really proactively working our nervous system to strengthen it. So I go back to when I first discovered Kundalini with that friend that was just always so cool and calm under pressure. It's a reflection of someone that has a very strong nervous system, right? It would take a lot
Hmm.
of not just our perceived fears or insecurities that would say, oh, this is so stressful. I'm so fearful. But someone with a very strong nervous system that has the capacity to see a situation for what it is, but not be ignited into that fight or flight stress response. And so Kundalini is a practice that helps us do that. It helps us do that through one, the Kundalini energy. I probably should explain the Kundalini energy.
Yeah, I
So
think that would be helpful.
yeah. So Kundalini, when we say Kundalini, it's actually a thing that lives in our body. It's this little coil of energy that lies at the base of our spine. And it's dormant for most people. And what Kundalini is, though, it's your life force energy. It's your life energy. It's your creative energy. It's your sexual energy. And it lies dormant. Now, what we do with Kundalini yoga is we do certain postures, kriyas, and breath work, and also what we call bandhas, which are locks that really help to awaken that energy. So imagine in your body, you've got this powerful life force energy, this energy that has the power to create things, this energy that has the power to heal. It's incredibly powerful and it's just lying there dormant. Kundalini is our process of activating and having access to that energy. So when we do these moves and we awaken that energy and through our bandhas, we have the ability to take this energy and allow it to rise up our central column through all of our chakras. And this is where I go back to that house analogy, where as it's that spark, that as that white light is coming up, as this Kundalini energy is moving through your body, it's also healing and clearing and balancing all that doesn't belong, all that you're ready to let go of. And more importantly, once we've cleared those channels and we've allowed that space for that Kundalini energy to rise, even to our prefrontal cortex and our pituitary gland, you now have access to this information. You have access to this awaken, this clearing. And so that's it in a simple way. And I'll get more into it as I delve more into like the things that it does. So even with our nervous system, when we put on some of these locks, we're strengthening our nervous system. We put our bodies under a little bit of pressure, right? So we'll hold some of these postures for a long time, but in so doing, we're strengthening our nervous system. We're putting our body under stress on the mat so that off of our sheepskin or our mat, we have a greater capacity to deal with life, right? So I often say in my classes that everything you desire that you don't currently have resides right outside of your comfort zone. But very rarely do people choose to step out of their comfort zone because it's not comfortable. And sometimes with the power of Kundalini, yeah, so you hold your arms for a little bit and it gets uncomfortable. But what you do as you hold this, as you're awakening that Kundalini energy, you're also releasing all of these neurochemicals and you're retraining your body to what stress is. You get to the other side of it. And through that, there's an amazing release. And through that release, it's just in those moments where you push yourself just a little bit, that's where your capacity expands, your capacity to deal, your capacity to be more. And it's so beautiful. I love teaching. I love when I just watch people and they like reach that threshold. And then to see them after class and to see and work with people, what's possible. It's truly transformational.
Amazing.
The
Just a
other
one
part
quick
of
question
this
there.
is
So
just the
um,
neurochemistry.
you
So
mentioned that
in traditional
basically
Chinese medicine, have you ever
Kundalini
had like
yoga is a
acupuncture?
hermetic
I'm sure
stressor.
you definitely
So in other
have.
words, it puts stress on your nervous system, right? So you're doing an adaptation to a hermetic stressor. For people with chronic fatigue or myalgic encephalomyelitis, you have coaching clients as well. Would you recommend Kundalini for someone who's already quite depleted, maybe has a very dysregulated nervous system, or would this be a little bit too destabilizing for them? So just curious, like more from a clinical perspective, like how would you recommend, are there any kind of contraindications to introducing this stressor to the nervous system?
No, not that I know of. And I haven't
Okay,
experienced or come across that yet. I have had clients that have dealt with chronic fatigue, and I'll recommend specific Kriyas that support that are a little gentler on their system. Also,
sure.
with Kundalini, there are no levels. It meets you where you are. So, one of the things I tell people is look, if we're holding something for 3 minutes and that feels a lot for you, do whatever you can and just take long, slow, deep breaths. Visualize yourself just doing it. But there's just something about even just being in the space of a room of people doing Kundalini, you will feel the energy. Just giving yourself that space to sit, even as you visualize it. If that's where you are, that's where you are. So Kundalini definitely meets people where they are. I'll also say I do teach Kundalini and I love it because I think it's really powerful. But I have an entire practice within Asri Wellness that really focuses on mindset and is really all about people removing the blocks that are keeping them held back. And most of this is dealing with mindset. So I work as a master level hypnotherapist and neurolinguistic programming practitioner. So I find Kundalini to be incredibly complementary to that practice, right? So we're already doing this cognitive work. We're already starting to work through and identify what's keeping us stuck. But what I find is sometimes there are things you can't articulate, but there are things that live in our body. And Kundalini understands as very well. You have fear, like stored in your liver. You have anger that you keep in your kidneys. Like you're storing all of these emotions within our body. And so I find Kundalini to be very complementary with this practice of we're working through our mind, we're clearing the subconscious beliefs, and then we're physically changing our body to align with this higher self. And it's been a game changer in terms of what people are able to do and how they feel in such a short amount of time. Literally in 6 weeks, you can have a completely new nervous system and in many cases, a whole new life.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty short, especially with a lot of somatic healing practices that are out there and people like Irene Lyon and Peter Levine and all these folks. So that's amazing. I would be curious because when someone's choosing a modality, especially if they're trying to rewire their nervous system, overcome limiting beliefs, there's a lot out there and there's obviously a limited amount of time for people. I'd be curious to know, does Kundalini work on its own effectively? So in the sense that, do you need to cognitively understand what you're clearing, what your limiting beliefs are in order to heal using Kundalini? Or can the body and energetic based process actually clear it without any rational or cognitive understanding of the trauma, of the limiting belief, of the blah, blah, blah. But you probably go into it knowing that something's wrong. But many times, a lot of practices like internal family systems or timeline regression therapy, it implies like there's two steps. One is like coming to a cognitive understanding of what's there. So understanding it just rationally, and then going in and rewiring or kind of assigning a new meaning to a specific thing. So
Yeah.
just love to learn about that. If this is kind of the same two-step, or can you go straight into Kundalini?
Yeah, that's a great question. And 100%. And I think that's why I love it. And that's why transformation can happen so quickly. Similar to Ayurveda, right? And understanding that we all have a constitution, like a set kind of perfected way that our body is meant to be that works optimally. And then life happens, right? Toxin,
Yeah.
relationship that kind of throws us off balance. Kundalini is also of that same technology with the understanding of there is a baseline, there is your perfect self all in balance. And it knows when things are off. It knows when we're harboring too much energy. It knows where there are blocks without anyone having to articulate that. And so just through the practice, just through awakening this intelligent, powerful energy and really circulating it and having access to it in itself is healing. It's your perfect antidote. That's different. And everyone's experience is different, right? I've taught classes where someone starts crying, like mine. I cried in the first class. There are times where I've had classes where you just want to laugh. There are times I've come out and I've just felt like I need a nap. Like it gives you exactly what you need. One of the things also that I love about it is it works again with the neurochemistry. So we do a lot of chanting. So Kundalini involves movement through our kriyas,
Mhm.
mantra, meditation, and breath work. And in the combination of ways, depending on what we're working on or working with that day. And I'll talk a little bit about how mantra that works because it's very powerful.
Sure.
So in traditional Chinese medicine, I'm sure many people have gotten acupuncture before. It works into this idea that we have meridians that run through our bodies, that when we stimulate one of these meridian endpoints, it encourages the flow of energy through that. And that's kind of really simplistically how acupuncture works. Within Kundalini, we understand that premise as well. And we also understand that we have meridian points at the palate of our mouth, the roof of your mouth, 84 in fact. And when we chant certain mantras, yes, there's a certain vibration, there's a currency, there's a mantra. So man meaning mind, tra meaning direction. We're directing our minds with a certain syllable, frequency, meaning of that. But also physically, our tongue is hitting certain meridian points at the palate of our mouth, sending a signal to your hypothalamus, which sends a signal to your pituitary gland, which encourages the release of certain neurochemicals. So you actually, through the act of chanting for a set amount of time, you're actually changing the neurochemical makeup of your body, right? So whether it's the release of serotonin or endorphins, you have a release that corresponds to the purpose of that mantra. And so doing this several times with this intention, going in with a regular practice, you start to feel different. There have actually been studies done, particularly with one particular Kriya that incorporates mantra called Kirtan Kriya, where they've seen this effects on reversing signs of Alzheimer's as it produces more gray matter in your brain. And there are more tests being done regularly, which I love because I love the science of it. But I can tell you through practice, you experience this as you're chanting. And I think that's so beautiful because there's so many practices within yoga, meditation, with some of this work where you just kind of have to trust that it's working. And Kundalini is so prescriptive and such comprehensive technology and fast acting. And it's like really like a silver bullet that you really feel the effects even from your first class. And even during it, just that awareness of the flow of energy within you and just connecting to that own power within you. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. And I think most of us could benefit from connecting more with our body and even more with our energetic field, because it sounds like that's what we're talking about. Is we're working a lot with the physical body, doing exercise or sauna, red light therapy, cold plunge, a little bit with breath work, for example, which is basically just a variation of pranayama. But I actually want to read a little bit about this study that you mentioned. I do think the listeners would benefit a lot. And so this one, it's the one, seems to be one of the more famous ones. So here I have it up, is that it was done on the Kirtan Kriya. This included UCLA, UPenn, and the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Organization. And I want to call out the exact benefits because they're really quite startling, actually. So they did 11 minutes a day of Kundalini yoga or practice for 11 weeks. This resulted in improved memory, reduced stress and anxiety, enhanced blood flow to key centers of the brain that, reverse neurodegenerative disease, a downregulation of genes that cause disease. So we're talking about epigenetic markers that have been impacted, as well as an upregulation of genes that promote immunity, improve sleep, and improve sense of clarity, and even spiritual well-being, which I'm not sure how they measured, but kind of interesting that they included that in a study because it means that the subjects mentioned that. I don't know. I found that pretty impressive and doing and some research on this. And yeah, I don't know. I felt the need to call it out because I don't think there's almost anything except for psychedelic medicine that is really touching all these areas.
Yeah. And it's fun, interesting. So in Kundalini, one of the reasons we say it's so powerful is it works on 10 bodies and it has identified 10 bodies. So you have your soul, right? The soul. And you take that for what you want it to mean, the infinite part of you. Then there's the negative mind, right? So how like our negative mind is the thing that keeps us safe. The positive mind, our level of optimism, your neutral mind, which takes the positive and the negative and really relays it into relation to what's best for you in the context of your soul. Then you have your physical body. Then you have your arc line, which is kind of like the nucleus of your aura. It's your point of projection, like what you're able to really put out into the world, your aura, so the whole magnetic field around you. You have your subtle body, so really just understanding the subtleties that's working with past lives, maybe karma, that's kind of like the record book of your soul. You have the pranic body, so your breath, your life force. And then you have your radiant body, right? What you project into the world, like people that walk out and they start like all sparkly and things like that. It's your radiant body, it's your present. And every Kriya is working on all of those levels. And so I love that even 3 of those are even mental. I guess geek out of that my love for neuroscience, but you're working on all those levels. So you're working not just physically, but working on all of their magnetic fields. You're working with past lives, this internal things. And I don't know any other practice. I'm sure there are other practices that work like this, but something that's so purposefully and specifically working and intentionally working on this complete soul, this complete person. And that's what Kundalini offers.
Amazing. So very, very cool. Would love to transition into a little bit around, we've talked a lot about spirituality, the 10 bodies, which is extremely helpful. I think that's a great kind of jumping off point to talk a little bit about connecting to source, those people that really want to deepen their spiritual practice. Many of us, especially that have been on the path for a while, we've dabbled in meditation, various styles of meditation. There's obviously degrees from classical, like Vipassana style, all the way to just kind of more like 3-minute reduce anxiety type stuff. I'd be curious to understand a little bit about how Kundalini yoga or Kundalini practice could be more effective or really kind of up level your practices as opposed to just doing meditation and breath work alone. Like, why should someone maybe invite this exploration as well?
Yeah. So you can take a Kundalini class. So at ASRI, I consider us to be a kind of a, a completely holistic ecosystem of wellness. And you kind of it meets you where you are. So there's one-on-one coaching, but I also have a membership, right? So if you want to take a one-off Kundalini class and you just feel great, that's amazing. It's already going to have an effect, right? You're already awakening that energy. But probably one of the most effective and powerful ways to use Kundalini is to work with a meditation for 40 days. And so we do I have a group every 40 days, we take a different meditation. And as I mentioned, it's not just 3 minutes, we're going to clear something. Every meditation, every Kriya has a very specific purpose, right? A very specific mudra or arm placement, a very specific mantra that we're using, right? That's stimulating a very specific response in our bodies. And done consistently, we say for at least 40 days, is when your body, it's the same way of like 21 days to make a habit. But after 40 days, your body locks that in. And that's how people really see true transformation. Even just 11 minutes a day, have it like every morning at 8. You can kind of come in on Zoom or all in our PJs or whatever. And we do this meditation, but it's that regular practice. And it's the constant awakening of that, right? So in the one that we're working on right now, it's called Tapping for Opportunities. And we use the mantra Haryang. So Haryang means destroyer of evil. And what's amazing is as you chant it, like Haryang, if you say it from your navel, it sends this vibration through your entire body. So you have your 30 million cells are vibrating this frequency. You feel this irradiate just even through your magnetic field. And then consciously just knowing that you're just kind of getting rid of what doesn't belong and starting your day that way, it really changes and sets the tone. And doing this over 40 days, your body learns. And so I think one of the best ways to integrate or begin a Kundalini practice is start small. Maybe start with a meditation, maybe start with a class and just experience it. But to really have a profound effect, I would say work with a teacher to really find something that could work for you, that meets your specific need. I actually offer free 30-minute calls, discovery calls, if you want to talk about it or want some guidance on that.
Yeah, and the link to that will be in the description as well or in the show notes. So for anyone that's interested, that'll be there.
Yeah, but I think that for me, when I started taking classes and I'm like, whoa, what is this? And it's great. And then, you go about your life, and unless you're going like every day or every week or have a consistent practice, oh, that's nice. But when you really start to use it as a tool, right, and say, okay, you know what? I'm ready to work and let go of limiting beliefs. So I'm ready to work on my negative mind because I feel like I'm always spiraling, or I'm ready to relieve anxiety, or I'm not sleeping well, or there's some for fertility, there's whatever you need. And then work with that practice for 40 days and then call me and let me know how you do. And it's always a profound, it's always a profound experience.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely will. So cool, so cool. And we'll go a little bit deeper into getting a practice started and some resources in just a moment. So I kind of want to put a pin in that for sure, because that's hopefully one of the outcomes of this podcast is that those that are interested and even in just listening to you, I'm actually very exuberant to deepen my own practice. So you and I have talked a little bit about plant medicine journeys. It's not something we've talked about today. And one of the pillars of I don't want to say good, but let's just say like one of the best practices when working with plant medicine is integration. I imagine that you've incorporated Kundalini in your plant medicine work. I don't know that for sure, but would be curious on how these two mesh together.
Yeah.
Are there any best practices for incorporating it, things you should do, things you should not do, and maybe be specific with the type of medicine you worked with and how you incorporated Kundalini into that processing period?
Yeah. So Kundalini was very helpful in leading up to it, right? Like I felt I did a hero's journey, which was a combination of psilocybin, which was a combination of penis envy and golden teacher and MDMA. And in preparation to that, I have my practice, my Kundalini practice, my morning sadhana that I do every day. And I found that very helpful because I'm clearing a lot, right? You have this awareness. I felt very, very open going into it. that being said, during the practice, I wasn't doing like any breath of fire. I wasn't doing any practice. I think Kundalini is very powerful energy. These are very powerful medicines. I wanted to give the medicine its chance. However, I will say, especially when you're working with psilocybin, it could be a journey. And sometimes there are things that you may not want to see that come up. And I found my breath and my ability to have this very strong nervous system to really breathe through even some of the uncomfortable time. And this openness to kind of let go. It's okay. And here it's almost like in Kundalini when we do an asana, which is a move. You'll do a move, you'll hold it, and you're kind of like, you want to put your arms down, you take a deep breath, and you hold your breath, and you hold this. It feels kind of uncomfortable, and then you let go and you release, and you just surrender to what is. And I found that practice and that ability to be able to kind of hold space for, okay, this is what it is, but this is going to pass. And that ability to release and surrender, so helpful in my journey. And I've done plant medicine. I've had journeys before. I have to say the journey that I've had post integrating a Kundalini practice was truly life-changing. Like what I was able to learn about myself, to see how vivid it was, and the integration that came afterwards of that insight, right? I feel like as I mentioned before, if your house and Kundalini helps you to really get in contact with the essence of you, I had that relationship, and that was a journey. It was part of that journey of that continued kind of I'm sorry, messing that up, but I had that awareness of that kind of deep part of me, and to have that journey, the plant medicine journey, to go deeper. Kundalini felt like a tool to help deepen that integration and prolong it. And it's amazing. I thought they went very well together. I would not recommend doing a Kundalini Kriya while working with plant medicine at all. I think that's two
Okay.
powerful, very different things. But I think having a practice within Kundalini can support you and give you the strength to really be able to surrender to the journey for what it is. And it's a powerful tool for integration after that experience.
Okay. That's really helpful. Also, we're talking a lot about moving energy and moving into the energetic body here. And there's a lot of different styles of breath work, but one that comes to mind right now is holotropic breath work, or a lot of these very rapid mouth based breathing techniques that are designed to elicit emotional releases, kind of opening up of patterns in your somatic body. A little bit more on the clinical side, less on the esoteric, but would be curious what release looks like in the Kundalini world versus kind of what I would call like almost like the trauma porn style where like everyone is screaming. And if you've ever been to like a holotropic session, there's a lot of theatrics, so to speak, a lot involved. So just
Yeah.
be curious on what that difference is like.
Yeah. It's different because Kundalini, it's the energy inside of you that you feel. And so I've had a few different types of ways of release. So first of all, there are some breaths that are very much a similar style where you're like, that really get the energy going. And we have a lot of rebirthing kriyas, which are like a full release and you feel it. But it's more of, it's so internal. It's the rush of this energy moving through you. I was just in India and we were doing something called long mul mantra, which is one of the most powerful mantras. And it's also a breathing exercise. So mantra incorporates breath. And I probably had one of the biggest releases I've ever had since I've been practicing Kundalini. And I'll describe what it felt like. We're in a room, 70 of us, like chanting, like in the foots of like the Dalai Lama's home in Dharmashala. And I swear I felt as if all of the energy of that room was going through me. And as it did, it wasn't, it was as if every fear, every doubt I had was there and I could not do anything to stop it. And actually, probably if I hadn't had a practice, I probably would have been like, that's too much. But with Kundalini, you kind of, everything you want is on the other side. So you just keep going, you keep breathing, and you can feel all of this energy going. I started crying. A lot of tears came out. I actually started physically shaking, like uncontrollably shaking. And it was almost like the things that were coming into my mind, the fears, the doubts, the worries, all of the things were almost like they were flashing in my mind as they were being physically released from my body. And after
Wow.
that experience, I just kind of sat there. It was so amazing because everyone's in this room where all their eyes are closed, and people on the opposite end of the room were like, at some point, I just felt like your name. And I like would just Like there's such this connective energy. Kundalini, I didn't scream. You kind of contain the energy. And one of the things I say in my class, you just allow yourself to experience the experience. And you hold yourself there and you allow for those things to be released. I'm actually teaching a series which are all about heart openers, right? Because sometimes we experience a disappointment in life or something happens and we're like, never doing that again. We put a wall up and we do everything we can to avoid that disappointment. But in so doing, we're also putting a wall up and that's avoiding things like the happiness and the things we want to call in. And so Kundalini is a powerful tool, even if you can't articulate what those walls are, that allow you to dissolve them. And there is a release and there's a feeling of a release in that. And you feel that through some of these breath works and movements. And what's interesting, it's not just sitting in one breath, right? You'll be sitting with your heart open and you're physically opening up your physical space, directing that breath to allow for that opening. And you can experience profound release in a short amount of time, which I don't think is quite as stressful on the nervous system as some of those that elicit these really kind of theatrical responses. It's very subtle, but incredibly powerful and potent.
Yeah, it's good to know because, a lot of these mouth-based techniques are really not good for many people, to be quite frank. They're very taxing on the nervous system. Perhaps there's some benefit in the release themselves. I mean, that has yet to be determined. But a lot of these circular breathing techniques like holotropic, they can be just very intense because they do ramp up cortisol and the sympathetic nervous system. So that's why I was asking if there's an alternative to doing these deep releases without kind of the damage to your nervous system in the short term. So that's really good to know. So one question that's kind of been percolating for me is sometimes you'll see these videos online of like Kundalini awakenings and what that looks like. And I would just like to hear from you what this term really means in practice. And does it involve like lots of shaking while people are like waving their fingers around and stuff? And kind of how does this fit into the broader context of a Kundalini practice?
Yeah. So it's interesting. The friend that I mentioned that's like, I had my Kundalini awakened. So she did a cap activation, which is the Kundalini activation process where someone is moving their hands and moving energy. I've never studied it, so I don't know exactly how that works, but I've experienced it though, where someone I almost feel like it's like Reiki, where they're awakening your Kundalini within you and drawing that energy through your body and they intuit where it needs to go and they're directing it. That's not what Kundalini yoga is, though. Kundalini yoga, and this is why I think it's so much gentler and it's why it's so personal of an experience for people. And it's so beautiful because it's so prescriptive for what you need. It's you using your own body. You'll even notice in a Kundalini class, the instructor, like I will stay on my stage or on my pillow. I don't touch you. I don't adjust you. It's really meeting you where you are. And it's you tuning into your subtle body, connecting and awaken your energy at whatever pace, strength you need or your body needs. It intuits that. And it works through your system, right? And we're doing it for you're working all of your 10 bodies. It's not just for like, wake it up and now your Kundalini is activated and you're calm and get to go. It's a process and it unfolds. And I think it's the unfolding of it that makes it so beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
It meets you where you are and the people that come into your life. And mind you, we're not just working your physical body, your energetic body, your radiant body, your soul. You start seeing more synchronicities. You start feeling more comfortable in your own skin. You start having more clarity, right? You're balancing your negative mind with your neutral mind. So you're starting to see more opportunities. It's truly profound. And it's beautiful if you allow it the space to unfold and you allow yourself the time to kind of allow it to unfold and for you to unfold in this process.
Absolutely amazing. So that's really helpful to understand the kind of difference between the cap activation or the Kundalini activation. Then you cut off for a moment, but we'll take it from there. So the cap act and then versus the Kundalini yoga. The next thing, I think we kind of want to conclude things a little bit, but if someone is interested in starting a Kundalini yoga practice, what's a good place to start? Are there any specific books or reputable online resources? And of course, obviously, you're a teacher, so feel free to include that as well. But just kind of what's a good place to start with this Kundalini practice? And I would say that most people listening to this podcast have exposure to yoga, to meditation, to breath work, etc. So it'd be kind of someone who's taking that next step.
Yeah. I definitely recommend Asri Wellness so I offer online classes every Tuesday because I try to really cater to someone that's new to Kundalini. I provide a lot more explanation. I remember my first class is just do it. And I'm like, what's happening to me? I wasn't prepared. So I think I like to just let you understand the signs. This is what we're working on. I think that's very helpful. So I definitely invite them to do that. Also, if you know this is a practice that you want to have and where to start, I definitely recommend talking to a teacher. So that's why I make those calls totally free to kind of guide you on that journey because everyone is different. It's not everyone's starting somewhere different. Everyone's looking to get something else out of it. And then also, if you want to just experience just a gong bath and just doing it in person and you're in New York, I teach at Rama, New York, which is beautiful. It's on Stanton and Essex on the Lower East Side. I'm there every Saturday at 11 and Thursday at 11. And that's just a great place to kind of meet in person and feel the energy. And I can kind of guide you and watch you within that. And then also, I make this available to everywhere I teach and to everyone I teach too. Kundalini is going to bring up a lot, right? It's, oh my God, I'm meeting the me in me. And it's exciting, but it's also, wait, why don't like some people I just can't even tolerate alcohol anymore. I just don't want it. You start to kind of awaken to these things or certain people feel different. And so I also offer support through that. And I think, like I mentioned, Kundalini is very powerful on its own. Mindset work is very powerful on its own, but combined, you can have a really profound experience and really start to shape a life you've never dreamed of. Because I'm telling you, my life, I couldn't have written it better had I tried. So it's a great combination, which I love offering through my 6-week breakthrough program.
Okay, great. So we're definitely going to include a link to that in the show notes or in the description, depending on where you're watching this. Amazing. So Kelle, this has been a really good kind of starter for her Kundalini series that I hope to do in the future. But I certainly got a lot out of this. And I think we covered a lot of ground. I'm really excited to kind of amp up my own practice and incorporate this. It's something that I've kind of dabbled with over the years with different kriyas and books and whatnot. And yeah, so really grateful for everything you shared today and deepening the listener's understanding, but also our own relationship through this conversation. So thanks so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I love this.
Awesome. And once again, everybody, so to stay in contact with Kelle, all of her contact details will be in the description. So to follow her on all the social platforms, join one of her groups, learn about her Kundalini practice, hypnotherapy, and NLP as well. So all of that will be down there. And of course, if you have any questions about Kundalini, anything that you wanted to cover in our subsequent episodes on Kundalini, please go ahead and drop that in the comments. Once again, thanks for listening. May everyone be happy, find ease. So, Satnam.
Satnam.